Let's give an introduction to Meseches Maasros. The Torah commands that several portions must be separated from the produce. Produce we're referring to over here is fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, herbs, all kinds of things that grows in Eretz Yisrael. Truma is given to a Kohen. Maaser Rishon is given to a Levi. Trumas Maaser, which is given to a Kohen by a Levi from the Maaser Rishon that he receives. Maaser Sheni, which is separated and taken to Yerushalayim and eaten there. And in some years, Maaser Oni, which is given to a poor in place of Maaser Sheni. The word Maaser means a tenth. The English word tithe means this as well. We're going to refer to it as Maaser, not as tithe or tithing. Each of these portions comes to a tenth of the crop, or a tenth of what remains after the previous portion has been separated, except for truma, which is about 2% of the crop. All these trumas and maasros, whatever they are, we already explained what they are in the הקדמה to Meseches Trumas. Meseches Maasros doesn't deal with any of these in particular, but with all of them collectively. The term maasros in the plural is used in this Masechta to refer to all the portions that must be separated from a crop, including truma, which is given to a kohen, which is only 2% of the crop. This Masechta sets out halachas for which kinds of produce become mechuyev in the chiyuv of maaser, when the produce actually becomes mechuyev and maaser, the levels of chiyuv that take hold at different stages of the production of the produce. So the question number one is, what kind of produce is subject to the chiyuv of maaser? The chiyuv of maaser applies only to things that grow from the ground. Even so, they do not apply to all kinds of plants. They apply only to plants that are eaten by people, and only to the parts of the plant that are commonly eaten. If you have a stem or a branch or a leaf that you normally don't eat, it's not going to be nichlal in the chiyuv of maaser. The Torah speaks of the chiyuv of maaser in connection with grain, wine, and olive oil. According to most Rishonim, the chiyuv deraisa applies only to these species. All other species of fruits and vegetables are mechuyev maaser only midrabanan. The Rambam, however, holds that all edible species are mechuyev in maaser, except for vegetables, which are mechuyev midrabanan. In order for produce to be mechuyev in maaser, it must be owned by someone and must be protected. Hefker, or produce that a person doesn't care about and allows others to take, is pater. So plants that grow wild in the mountain and forests are not mechuyev in maaser. Or if I have a tree and part of the fruits of the tree are falling in Rishus Harabim and people trample on them, so I don't get busy with taking them, since it's not shamor, so then there's no, maybe a tefker, it's not shamor, so then there's no chiyuv of maaser on those. Produce becomes pater from maaser only if it becomes hefker before the time of the chiyuv should take effect. That is, before the produce has been fully processed, before the gemar malacha. But once there's gemar malacha, then it's mechuyev, and it remains mechuyev even if the produce becomes hefker afterwards, as we learned from Masechta Peah. Okay, number 2, the stages of the chiyuv. The chiyuv of maaser doesn't take effect all at once. Produce must go through several stages of growth and processing before it becomes mechuyev in maaser in Torah. Midrabanan, however, produce is mechuyev in some kind of chiyuv even before the final stage. So there's something called einas hamaasros. The first stage of development that's important for the halachas of maaser is when the produce grows to the point where it begins to be edible. This differs from all the different minim of fruits. The Mishnayos list this level of development for many different species. It's known as einas hamaasros, the time of maaser. Before a plant reaches this stage, its fruit is not mechuyev maaser at all. If someone wishes to eat it, he can eat it without taking off any maaser. So if it was picked and designated as truma or maaser, the designation doesn't take effect because there's no chiyuv yet. Once a plant reaches einas hamaasros, the halachas of maaser begin to apply to it. The fruit cannot be eaten in a regular way, which is achilas keva, without separating maaser. However, it may be eaten as a snack, achilas arai, without separating maaser. Also, if someone picks and designated as truma and maaser, the maaser will take effect. That's einas hamaasros. Number 2, we have to know there's something here called gemar malacha. Once produce ripens and is harvested, it must be collected and brought in from the field to the house. Exactly in that way. This is not done piece by piece, but all together. Meaning he brings the basket of all the figs from the field into the house. As a result, the work in the field is not finished until the produce has been completely gathered in a way that it is now ready to be brought in. Additionally, certain kinds of produce are not brought into the house until they have undergone further kinds of preparation. For example, grain like wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats, that's chameshes mine dagon, is threshed in the field to separate the kernels from the chaff before it's brought in. Grapes and olives are pressed to produce wine and oil, and figs are often dried before being brought into the house. The status of maaser, of the produce, doesn't change until all the work is usually done to it in the field has been completed, and now it's ready to be brought into the house. This is known as the completion of processing the Gemar Malacha. This too differs from species to species, and the Mishnayos will identify this stage for many different minim, even for the different uses of specific types of fruits. Once the produce has been fully processed, it's usher even to eat achilas arai from that fruit. However, this is only so for produce that's been taken to be sold, rather than being brought home for personal use. Produce that's brought home from the field does not become usher for achilas arai until it either enters the house or until something else is done to set it into a chiyuv of meiser. So what's that? That's going to lead us into the third halacha that we have to know over here also. There's something that becomes kaveya lemeiser. There are 6 things that are kavua, that are going to be kaveya for meiser, that set the meiser obligation of finished produce and cause it to become usher to be eaten achilas arai even before being brought into the house. These are bringing the produce into the owner's courtyard, even without bringing it into the house, selling it, cooking it, salting it, separating truma from it, and Shabbos, the arrival of Shabbos, which we'll get to. This is known as being kaveya lemeiser, setting the chiyuv of meiser. It means that if someone brings his finished produce into his courtyard, or he sells it before bringing it into his house or his chutzner, it may no longer be eaten as a snack without separating meisers from it. Similarly, if he cooks it or salts it, to preserve it or pickle it, he may not eat it even as a snack without separating meisers from it. Also, once he separates truma from it, he may not eat the rest of the produce as a snack without separating the other meisers. And even if he has done none of these things, once Shabbos arrives, the produce may not be eaten even as a snack without separating meisers, which you can't do on Shabbos either, because Shabbos, you can't be Meseches Maasros on Shabbos, but that's a separate shmuz which we discussed in Meseches Maasros. The topic is discussed at length through Parak Beis, Gimel, and Dalet, the halacha of being kaveya lemeiser. The fourth halacha is Re'iyas Pnei Habayis, seeing the face of the house. As we explained previously, once finished produce is brought into the house, it becomes subject to the full meiser obligations and can no longer be eaten as a snack, achilas arai, until its meisers have been separated. However, this does not happen unless it's brought in through the main door, the face of the house. If it's brought through a skylight in the roof or a back door, it doesn't become mechuyev in meisers yet. Now, we mentioned previously that there's something called achilas keva and something called achilas arai. So there are certain stages of growth of different fruits or processing of different fruits which may be eaten as a snack, but not in a regular way. Snacking is not defined by how much a person eats, but on how he eats it. There are times when he can eat even a large amount of the produce and it will be considered snacking, while in other circumstances, eating even a small amount is considered regular eating. For example, a person may peel and eat raw barley kernels one by one, even if he ends up eating many of them, but he may not peel a number of them together and eat them, since this is how barley kernels are eaten regularly. He may even break up whole ears of wheat and remove their chaff by hand and eat all the kernels, provided he does not gather them in his lap before eating them. Another thing that's important to know is tevel. Once produce becomes fully subject to the chiyuv of meisers, it's also to eat it before the meisers have been separated. That's called tevel. The makar for this iser is explained in the Gemara Sanhedrin on Pei Gimel. Such produce is known as tevel. Eating tevel is, the einish is either malchus or misa b'dei shamayim. Tevel may not be used in a way that destroys it. It may also not be sold except in certain circumstances. What about Bizman Hazeh? The halachas of meisers apply today in Eretz Yisrael. However, there's a question whether the chiyuv is midiras or midrabanon. There are those that are more makbid and there are less makbid. Each person should go ask their local Orthodox rabbi how to be noyeg over here.